Greetings from LA, my dear friends. This is Daisuke, and I very much hope that this video finds you well and in very good spirits wherever you are in the world. And today, if you don't mind, I would very much like to continue on with our journeys, our discussions, our discoveries, and our explorations with respect to the recent releases made by the Criterion Collection during this year of 2024. And that brings us to a title which actually already currently exists in the Criterion Collection physical media catalog at spine number 977. But on the occasion of 2024 this year, the Criterion Collection has opted to re-release this title, this time utilizing the 4K UHD plus Blu-ray combo format. And I am speaking of a work which is described as being from the year 1986. And the name of the filmmaker is David Lynch. And the name of the work is Blue Velvet. This is the work which is described as being from the year 1986, and the name of the filmmaker is David Lynch. This is a film which is directed by David Lynch. It is a screenplay by David Lynch, and we have director of photography Frederick Elms, sound designer Alan Splett, with music by Angelo Badalamenti, and others on the great production. And in terms, on the other side of the coin, we have, in terms of the legendary cast, we have actors such as Isabella Rossellini and Kyle MacLachlan and Laura Dern and Dennis Hopper and Dean Stockwell and Sparky and others. Just saying that list is just sending chills because it's one of the iconic. It's so iconic in terms of the cast and production values of this really breathtaking, seminal, landmark work. It's a landmark work in the filmography of David Lynch. It's a landmark work in the context of 1980s American cinema. And it is a film that is still talked about, debated, dissected, explored to this very day. And I think for good reason. It is this film, which is Blue Velvet. So 1986's Blue Velvet. It is re-emerging in the Criterion Collection because as we may know, the Criterion Collection released it earlier, some years back, around 2019, on a Blu-ray edition, which is what I have here. But on the occasion of this year, 2024, we have the re-emergence of Blue Velvet, but this time employing the 4K UHD plus Blu-ray combo edition. So we have a 4K UHD disc and then the Blu-ray disc. And so it'll give us the opportunity to speak a little bit about the supplements, etc., that we find on the Blu-ray, which we also found on the earlier 2019 release. And so it'll be a good opportunity to do so. I haven't had the chance, I think, to speak in detail about this film, Blue Velvet. So I'm very glad, and I consider myself very fortunate to be afforded this opportunity to speak about this film. I'll try my best to speak about this. I have so many feelings about this work, and so I won't be able to express them in an efficient or satisfactory way, so I apologize in advance, but here goes nothing. Blue Velvet is a work which is so many things at once. It's a film that is in many ways a kind of mystery. I mean, it is a mystery, or it's a set of mysteries. It is a detective thriller. It is a suspense film. There are homages to classic suspense films of years past. There might be maybe certain aspects of film noir, The Third Man, Alfred Hitchcock films, etc. They're all embedded, and this film is infused with those sorts of of cinematic pursuits, as it were, as a detective thriller or a police procedural to a certain extent. But it has at its very core the character of Jeffrey Beaumont, who is we understand that he is a student, he is a college student, but he has been brought back for certain reasons to his hometown of Lumberton, due in primary part, we understand from the very outset, due to something very serious and severe and significant that happens to his father. And so he is back home after being away for some time, but he's back home, but immediately he and we are thrust into a very unsettling mystery, which is sparked by a discovery in a field in this idyllic place, which is discovery of what looks like a decaying and severed human ear. And thus begins the journey, or one could say perhaps the journey had been started prior to this discovery, but it seems for purposes of the plot propulsion of this work, Blue Velvet, this is the catalyst, or this is the catapult, if you will, of Jeffrey's journey, his descent, his quest to discover the mystery of this severed human ear. And here we have so many things happening at once. We have the interaction with the character of Sandy, who is portrayed by Laura Dern in a brilliant performance, which is counterbalanced by yet another character that we will meet along the way, who is portrayed by Isabella Rossellini, who's Dorothy Valens, in what has to be one of the show-stopping performances in not just this film, Blue Velvet, but in all of David Lynch's works. And it's the mystery of Dorothy Valens. It's the seductive nature of Dorothy Valens, or perhaps to put it more directly, it is the way in which characters react to Dorothy Valens, including Kyle MacLachlan's Jeffrey, which also seems to further the initiatives of Jeffrey and to further his motivations to discover what is the answer to this mystery, and to discover to what extent is Isabella Rossellini's Dorothy Valens involved. But that is not all, because in this seemingly idyllic small town tranquility, we have also the discovery of things that seemingly bubbling underneath the surface, much like bugs, creepy crawlies that seem to crawl and fester under the perfectly cut mowed lawns. We have also things that seem to be festering under the surface that are bursting forth, or perhaps that are the result of this quest by Jeffrey to discover the truth. And lo and behold, we are introduced to a kind of underworld, a very unsettling underworld, where the character of Dorothy Valens seems to be connected. To what extent is her character connected to this underbelly of unsettling characters is something that we as viewers, as we watch the film, particularly those who are watching this film for the first time, will discover as the film progresses. But herein lies the introduction of, I said that this film, Blue Velvet, has show-stopping performances. I mean, Kyle MacLachlan, Laura Dern, and Isabella Rossellini. And add to that list, too, the performance by Dennis Hopper as Frank Booth. And we have the introduction of one of the most memorable characters, shall we say, in this film, Blue Velvet, and indeed in any David Lynch film, and indeed perhaps in any American film from the 1980s. What's a good adjective to describe Frank Booth? Maelstrom. I mean, well, maelstrom is a noun. So what's a good word of describing Frank Booth? Maelstrom, fury, kind of a kind of anarchy that knows no limits. This character, Frank Booth, emerges on the scene, and almost immediately we and Jeffrey begin to realize that Frank Booth's involvement in these proceedings seems to have a very nefarious and quite vicious complexity to it, especially when Dorothy Valens, the Isabella Rossellini character, is involved, which involves very unsettling and vicious and violent scenes. This is a film, Blue Velvet, that does have depictions of violence and kind of very challenging scenes and very difficult scenes to watch that involve acts of sadism, etc. But this is also to, again, portray the extent of the extremity of a character like Frank Booth and the plots that are the undercurrents of this film, and also serve to further propel the mystery or the need to solve the mysteries by Jeffrey Beaumont, who is by this time a kind of amateur sleuth, hot on the tail, much like, say, with the curiosity that is just only heightened and heightened and heightened, much like, say, a James Stewart character in an Alfred Hitchcock film like Rear Window. But when he comes face to face with the maelstrom that is Frank Booth, and not only when he witnesses the viciousness of Frank Booth, but when Jeffrey Beaumont also comes face to face with the danger of that is Frank Booth, this film becomes something that was perhaps at some point during its running time a kind of dream, a chrysalis of a dream, but then it turns really dark and nasty, like dreams can turn on a dime into a vicious nightmare that spirals out of control. And so what Blue Velvet becomes, or what it already is, and we become cognizant of, is a dream complex turned into a nightmare galore. And we are prone to, and we are witness to, images and scenes and sounds and music that seems to be maybe like something out of Dante's Inferno. That is also something out of like maybe the suggestion of Quest through the absurd, where violence is also hinted at, where the further unmeshing of viciousness and the depths of depravity are also hinted at, and also perhaps directly come into contact, brushing up against Jeffrey and Dorothy Valens. And we also see, too, the seeds of a kind of plot that has its very roots within the core structure of this idyllic town of Lumberton in very unsettling and nefarious ways. I mean, it is all coming into focus, again, as dream turns into nightmare, which is, again, going back to a type of earlier conceit that opens the film Blue Velvet, which is the notion of what's oft described as the white picket fences, the flowers growing from the ground, the perfectly cut mowed lawns, the upstanding citizenry, the dogs on the corner, and the children riding their bicycles with the bicycle bells, etc., with the lovely tunes of 1950s Americana sweeping up the sort of majesty of the place. And so this is Americana, which has the idyllic and tranquil nature, but it can turn on a dime in an instant into a nightmare, with the creepy crawlies festering beneath the surface. And so what this then brings into question is the idyllic nature the true nature, and therefore is the stuff that lurks beneath the surface something that is other than the true nature? Is the dream a dream and the nightmare something separate from the dream? Or, which is something that I think Blue Velvet also posits, is the dream and is the nightmare one and the same? And are we led, therefore, to believe that the idyllic nature of things that we have been comforted by in the world of Blue Velvet, are these things but a dream, but an illusion, in favor of something that is more nightmarish? Or can we be led to assume and believe and maybe hope that maybe there is room for both in an unsettling, uneasy kind of way that can be combined or explored in a way like David Lynch can do? These are really, I think, very compelling maybe modes of interpretation of this work, Blue Velvet. That the plot itself, as we learn more of the mystery. And as we learn more of these characters, and as we learn more about how the dreams turn into nightmares, I think these modes of interpretation can become available to us, which I think is a very exciting, dynamic way of watching a work like Blue Velvet. And so this really brings, I think, a lot to bear. And there's a lot of tests, tests of character, tests of strength, tests of say, devotion and loyalty that are on display, which really showcases a lot of the characteristics and the emotional and physical and spiritual developments of the characters and the character arcs. Again, maybe intersecting and interweaving to kind of inexorable conclusion. All the while we are being treated or perhaps dazzled by, or maybe even confronted by or scared by images which I think are, and images and sounds which I think in the grand scheme of cinema, certainly in the grand scheme of the body of work of David Lynch, have become so indelible and so legendary and iconic. That's to make for, I think, truly captivating viewing and listening indeed. So there's a lot to unpack when one watches Blue Velvet, I think. And so one of the ways to do that, or to maybe enjoy that and to revel in that, is, for instance, I've alluded to this before, which is the performances. I think I mentioned this. There is a reason why this film is so famous, and one of the reasons is the cast. In many ways, the cast members these are some of their famous roles. I mean, the actors have so many prominent careers, respectively, and for each of them, one can say, Blue Velvet is one of the memorable stops along the way in their illustrious careers, respectively. So I speak of, for instance, Isabella Rossellini. Dorothy Valens is one of the most iconic characters. Jeffrey Beaumont is one of the most iconic characters. Sandy Williams is one of the most iconic characters. I mean, the entrance of Laura Dern as she emerges very early on, as she emerges from the darkness to the light in a very slow fade, is one of the most famous entrances, I think, in all of David Lynch's cinema. And then, of course, Dennis Hopper and Kyle MacLachlan and others. I mean, this is a cast of this is a collection of actors who are doing work that is standing the test of time, is absolutely legendary. Kyle MacLachlan is providing a character that is so earnest and so humble, but also thrust into circumstances that seemingly are beyond his control, and perhaps are threatening to reveal certain aspects of his own character that will scare him and maybe even threaten his own sense of resolve and peace and tranquility as to who he is, or who he thinks he is. And so that also leads into a question of is the dream and is the nightmare one and the same? And so is a character like Kyle MacLachlan's Jeffrey Beaumont, I mean, is this someone who has a certain upright values, or perhaps are those values corruptible due to his influence and his furtherance into the attempt to discover the mystery with regard to the characters like Dorothy Valens and Frank Booth? Or are there aspects of Jeffrey Beaumont's character that could be said to be exactly mirroring a character like Frank Booth? I mean, after all, Frank Booth, around the middle of the film, he does say directly to Jeffrey Beaumont, "You're like me." And so query and question as to how true that is in the grand scheme of things, at least in the context of Jeffrey Beaumont's character. Again, the juxtaposition between good and evil, dream and nightmare, and the hero and the villain, as it were. And so this is Kyle MacLachlan at his best, and this is this is yet one of many great roles of Kyle MacLachlan's career. And so Jeffrey Beaumont is one of the famous characters in all of David Lynch's cinema, thanks in large part to the great performance by Kyle MacLachlan. And Frank Booth, Dennis Hopper. I mean, I've already mentioned a little bit about his performance before, but let me just say again that this is a character of the ages. And you know, I would not want to walk into a bar and see Frank Booth there. If I were ever to see Frank Booth in Dennis Hopper's Frank Booth in a bar, I would just very politely and nonchalantly turn around and walk out of the bar and get away as soon as possible. I mean, there is madness and threat abound, and so. So many catchphrases, so many scenes, and sometimes the scenes are really intense, really unsettling, really disturbing. And there are also scenes where the absurd and the grotesque just absorb into a kind of over the top absurd, funny comedy routine. There's a very famous exchange with regard to beer and Heineken and Pabst Blue Ribbon. There's also some scenes involving cold beer and warm beer. The exchange, for instance, between Dennis Hopper's character and Brad Dourif and Jack Nance, etc. I mean, these are some of the these are unsettling. These are absurd. They're also very funny and very comedic. And so there is a kind of wide range, wide berth of reactions and they're all extreme in the context of the character of Frank Booth. And I also should mention, I mentioned also some other great actors like the great Jack Nance, the great Brad Dourif. There's also Dean Stockwell in the way that music is used in a very key sequence, which Dean Stockwell is a key role. Here's to Ben, and this is one of the passages of David Lynch's works, the scene involving Ben and the use of a song, which is by a very legendary singer called Roy Orbison, and the song is called "In Dreams." I can't tell you how many times I've seen this scene. Ever since I was younger, I would just play this like nonstop. It was one of those scenes that just captured my imagination, and indeed the imaginations of many a film lover of my generations and many other generations, I dare say. I mean, this is the stuff of David Lynch. I mean, this whole film, Blue Velvet, is the stuff of David Lynch. But if I had to pick one scene, it would be Dean Stockwell's Roy Orbison in Dreams. I mean, just even thinking about it just shivers down the spine. And so Dean Stockwell, again, providing one of the legendary characters, that is Ben. Once again, here's to Ben. Be polite. And so the performances and the structure is incredible, absolutely incredible. And speaking of songs and singing, going back to Dorothy Valens and Isabella Rossellini, there is a great juxtaposition between the use of Bobby Vinton's Blue Velvet, which is part of the after we get into the opening credits, we go into the film. There is a reference to Blue Velvet, Bobby Vinton's Blue Velvet, and the song Blue Velvet is also performed with a kind of a barroom stage performance quality that is haunting, that's chilling, that's also very that is very and I mean this very positively. I mean there is a nakedness to the performance which I think is very haunting and also suggests a soulful sensitivity that is also hurtful, that is also in a lot of pain. And that performance is, again, one of the key ways in which Kyle MacLachlan's Jeffrey, and indeed Frank Booth, Dennis Hopper's Frank Booth, and others, and us perhaps, get to know or become seduced by what our image of Dorothy Valens is, and it's helped along the way by Angelo Badalamenti and the way that the decor looks and the scenery and the curtains and the lighting, the reds and the blues. I mean, this is also the stuff of David Lynch legend. Dorothy Valens' performances scenes are among the most iconic scenes in all of David Lynch's cinema, and thus some of the most iconic scenes in all of American cinema of the late 20th century. So when one sees images of Isabella Rossellini standing on the stage with the microphone in front of her, with the lighted curtains behind her, and the piano and the seductive mood of the piece, people know what this is, and it is that famous. And so, again, so many key moments that are stemmed in large part from the brilliance of the performances all around. And in this discussion, I've also alluded to the way that light and sound and image are interacting in the hands of David Lynch, and also the artists that are working with him here. So Frederick Elms and also Alan Splett, et cetera, and Angelo Badalamenti, et cetera, and others. We are given a kind of tour de force of artistry that is so finely tuned and so graceful, and also very direct, and dealing with fundamentals. I love what I love about David Lynch works, and Blue Velvet is a wonderful example of this. It seems to be a film about fundamentals, using the fundamentals in a way that suggests a kind of simplicity. And there's some shots involving a silhouette of moving industrial works, which is almost like a shadow play that's just projected on a large wall, but it works. And so that's a kind of use of a fundamental effect of shadow play and light and motion to create an illusion. And the same is true for the use of curtains in the scenes that I was alluding to. The use of curtains and shining lights on curtains and changing blues into reds and vice versa, while also adding to that the ambiance and the mood piece and the song and the soul of the voice of Isabella Rossellini as she's performing Blue Velvet. That also adds to these fundamental points, but then combined in a way that is like a kind of cinematic alchemy. No, it doesn't. It's almost like 1 plus 1 equals X, and in your mind you think 1 plus 1 equals 2, but 1 plus 1 in the hands of David Lynch seems to lead to X. And that X is something very fundamentally magical indeed. So that's what I mean in my very crude way of describing it, where I feel like, again, David Lynch is using the fundamentals of cinema, 1 and 1 as an example, but he is turning it into or transforming it using all the wondrous genius approaches to cinema that he has, and art that he has, and using magic and alchemy to create something that is utterly transformative and just transformational. And that's one of the aspects that I think makes Blue Velvet such a Blue Velvet's legacy so long-lasting in terms of its longevity. Indeed. And so those magical touches are just abound in this work, Blue Velvet. I mean, there's so many magical touches in this, all the way down to the decoration and the costumes, the so-called suit of the yellow man, for instance, and also the way that the well-dressed man looks, and not to mention what the well-dressed man wears, etc. As I mentioned too, there's images of birds that are very important. There's also, as I mentioned, how characters emerge and recede back into space and time and darkness. So the introduction of Laura Dern's Sandy is really quite incredible. Also, there's a scene where Sandy is crying almost hysterically, and the way that Laura Dern is able to put her mouth in a certain shape, it's almost, I can't quite, there's a scene rather late in the work where there's an intense confrontation between Sandy and Jeffrey, involving the character of Dorothy Valens. And so when Sandy is confronted with this, she is crying, or she's about to cry hysterically. And it's a really intense emotional scene. And the way that her mouth looks as she's crying, it's in this shape. I'm not sure how, I can't mimic it. It's a detail that is, it's the height of emotion, but it's almost absurd in the way it's formed. It reminds me of an earlier work by David Lynch called Eraserhead, and there's a character in Eraserhead who's referred to as the lady in the radiator, and so there's echoes of that in terms of the way that the lower part of the face is reacting in this intense moment. That's what I mean when I say that in David Lynch land, for me, when I watch a David Lynch work, I always look at the fundamentals and how they are being concocted together to form this brew that will turn into something completely different. But at the same time, I'm recognizing the parts, and I'm loving every moment of it. And also there are times when my emotion will go one way, in this intense scene of Sandy hysterically crying or about to cry. But then I noticed this detail, and it seems just so off-putting and absurd to make me want to veer into feeling like this is a comic routine. I mean, this is the genius of David Lynch, and it's operating on full force in this film Blue Velvet. And I am it just I continue to be marveled at this. I discover new things every time I watch this film, and I hear new things whenever I watch this film, and I am I just can't get enough of this. It is a work of the ages. It's a very special film. Again, it's not a film for everyone. Again, David Lynch films aren't for everyone, that's for sure. And so there are very rough, very intense moments. And so if that's not your cup of tea, that's okay. But again, for those of you who for whom David Lynch works are your cups of tea, this is not just a huge heaping of very delicious tea, but it's something that is, I think, ever sustaining, having a high degree of sustenance, cinematic sustenance indeed, that again has a long life, ever beyond the year 1986. I mean, it's still alive and well even now. You know, what is it? 40 years or so afterwards. So it is a tour de force. It is one of the special, magical, frightening films. It is a film noir film. It is also a horror film. It's a comedy film. It's a romance. It's a film that is about dreams and nightmares. It is about love and the mysteries of love and love letters straight to your heart. And there's also film that is about images and dreams and ambitions and the darkness under the surface, and also the way that things have a kind of idyllic tranquility. Going back to the notion of Lumberton, going back to the notion of Bobby Vinton's Blue Velvet, played over these feelings and gestures and rumors and images of a kind of peaceful and tranquil small town Americana in the hands of David Lynch, where things can be very, very strange indeed. This is one of the most landmark films of 1980s cinema, and is one of the most important films in the canon of the works of David Lynch. This is the film which is Blue Velvet. The Criterion Collection has re-released this work, Blue Velvet, into its physical media catalog. Again, this is a work that already existed at spine number 977 on a previously released Blu-ray edition. This is what I have here from circa 2019. But now we have the 4K disc and the Blu-ray combo disc, which is part of the basis of this release here in 2024. The earlier Blu-ray release from 2019 was purported to be based on what was described at the time as a new 4K digital restoration with 5.1 surround DTS HD master audio, supervised by director David Lynch. And here we have what I understand is the same source for purposes of the release that is part of the new 2024 release. So I don't think it doesn't look like we're talking about any new restoration here, but that's okay, because the way it looked on the Criterion Blu-ray I thought was really outstanding. And there are a few details, actually, in the context of that, actually, there are some details that I do want to discuss. And I think discussing it in the context of the 4K UHD disc, which is what I have in the player right now, by the way, I think it's a good opportunity to discuss that. So, but let me now just refer to the booklet, which was part of the 4K UHD plus Blu-ray 2024 release. And it says on page 28 about the master, and I quote, "Blue Velvet is presented in the aspect ratio of 2.35 to 1, supervised and approved by director David Lynch. This 4K restoration was created from the 35mm A/B original camera negative. The feature is presented in Dolby Vision HDR high dynamic range on the 4K Ultra HD disc to preserve the wide color gamut of the theatrical presentation, and high definition SDR standard dynamic range on the Blu-ray." So it's very important to preserve that wide color gamut. And I continue. The 5.1 surround soundtrack was created in 2008 by Lynch and re-recording mixer Dean Hurley at Lynch's own asymmetrical studio in Los Angeles. It was made from the original source 35mm magnetic stock stems, which were limited to an LTRT music and effects mix, as well as monaural dialogue, music, and effects stem sources. The decoded original music and effects mix of the film became the foundation for the new LCR image of the mix, utilizing the mono dialogue stem for the discrete centered channel source, as well as the phase-aligned mono music and effects stems as units for selective low-frequency enhancement and light ambient surround imaging. At the same time, the original Dolby Stereo full-coat mag stock print master of the film was referenced at all times during the creation of the new mix for consistent balance, color, and saturation characteristics. The alternate 2.0 surround soundtrack was mastered from this element as well. Please be sure to enable Dolby Pro Logic decoding on your receiver to properly play the Dolby 2.0 surround soundtrack. And there we go. So, my feelings about the, I thought that the Blu-ray looked and sounded quite outstanding. And there are actually, with a few maybe slightly interesting, or to my mind at least, interesting nuanced feelings or caveats with respect to that. And I feel like those nuanced feelings have become slightly more pronounced when I watch the 4K. So taking a step back, the 4K is sourced from the same materials in terms of sound and the full body presentation. So you're getting your money's worth if you watch this film on the 4K disc or you watch it on the Blu-ray disc. I think from my point of view, is it absolutely necessary to get the 4K UHD if you already have the Blu-ray? That's a good question. I'm not quite sure. I would probably say that it's a good question, and it's not utterly necessary. I think the Blu-ray itself was quite outstanding, but there are some noticeable differences to my eyes, and admit my eyes are quite amateur indeed, and so I'm not at all professional, so I can't capture these and express them very well, unfortunately, so I apologize in advance for that. But I can point to a couple of examples that I felt when I watched the film on Blu-ray, and I feel slightly more pronounced when I watched the film on the 4K UHD experience. So there are, and I already referenced them in the discussion earlier of the film Blue Velvet, at least from my subjective viewpoint. So there's one example of earlier in the film where Sandy emerges from the darkness, and the introduction of the Sandy character, Laura Dern's character. And there's another example later on where we have a shot of Ben, the Dean Stockwell character. And there's a very iconic, famous moment where he shines a light to his face, about to perform a song by Roy Orbison, In Dreams. And so in both of these instances, I kind of noticed it when I watched the Blu-ray, but I felt that it was slightly more pronounced when I watched it on the 4K UHD disc, which is they have this almost maybe cloudy isn't the right word. There is a softness to their faces, which suggests to me that they are of the dream world. I don't know if that makes any sense. So when I see Sandy's face, Laura Dern's face, emerging from the darkness, there is a kind of soft quality to the skin tones in her face, which I think become slightly more pronounced when I watch the film on 4K, thus maybe suggesting to me on a psychological level, or maybe on a subconscious level, that this is almost like a dream version of a character that we are meeting. Sandy emerging from the darkness, emerging from the nightmare as kind of a dream of salvation, in a manner of speaking. And to a certain degree, perhaps that is consistent with, in terms of her character and how she interacts, for instance, with the character of Kyle MacLachlan's Jeffrey Beaumont. And so there is a sense of the dreamlike quality of her introduction, which I felt even more to a certain degree when I watched the film on the 4K. Okay. And a similar reaction I had when I saw Dean Stockwell's face and the light that struck it. Up to then, it was clouded in a kind of shadow darkness or dimness. But then when the light shone on his face, again, I noticed a similar type of softness. Candy-colored clown come to life indeed. This is also someone that I think that softness suggests to me the dream or the nightmare quality of that moment in the time of the film. And I think, to me, that makes the experience of watching it on the 4K that ever more tilted into the dream interpretation logic in watching Blue Velvet, which I think this film is very prone to, and I think it's a very reasonable type of interpretation to have. But again, it's your call. I mean, is it worthwhile to watch Blue Velvet with the dream logic mode turned on all the way? Or is it also valuable to be reminded, even in subtle degrees, to the extent of these characters are acting outside of the dream? And so I think with me and David Lynch works, at least how I respond to them, in particular Blue Velvet, I can go either way. And so I'm kind of struck by that because it feels almost like it's on the nose and it's perfect, and perhaps maybe in a really interesting way, maybe it's almost too perfect. I don't know if that makes any sense. But for me, it's not like the 4K UHD experience will be the default, and I won't watch any other disc of Blue Velvet that I have, but it will be one other optional alternative way for me to experience and perhaps even interpret or reinterpret or reevaluate my feelings of Blue Velvet, using those two scenes as an example. I mean, it's not prominent throughout the entirety of the 4K UHD disc experience, mind you, but it is prominent, or it does make subtle emergences here and there. And I think, again, in my own very very unprofessional way, but the way that I'm only capable of, it feels like it's veering into even further degrees of the dream logic. And if you are prone, or if you are preferring that type of engagement or viewing of or interpretation of Blue Velvet, then perhaps the 4K UHD experience might be for you. Um, it is a very valuable experience indeed. So maybe I'll take a step back. If you are a fan of Blue Velvet, I mean, you're probably considering getting the 4K UHD plus Blu-ray combo edition anyway, even though you might already have the Criterion Blu-ray from a few years back. It might be an interesting exercise to see how you, as fans of Blue Velvet, and as your own subjective viewpoint as to how you have engaged with Blue Velvet over the years, how you'll respond to these moments of the 4K experience that I have alluded to. Maybe you feel like they're there. Maybe they won't affect you. Maybe you don't see them. Maybe I am. Maybe you think I might be misinterpreting some aspects of how the 4K presentation looked. That's fine. That's fine. But in any event, I think it's an interesting furtherance of an alternative mode of engagement with the film Blue Velvet, which I find very exciting. That's not to say that, again, the Blu-ray is going to be on the shelf and never taken out again, ever again. No. The Blu-ray has its own realms of interpretation that I think I still need to rely upon as I continue on with my cinema journey and the revisitations to this film, Blue Velvet. And so now I have the Blu-ray, not the 4K disc, but the Blu-ray disc in the machine now, because as with Criterion 4K UHD plus Blu-ray releases in the past, this release of Blue Velvet has two discs, the 4K UHD disc and then the Blu-ray disc, the HDR and SDR, and then you can watch the film on either that 4K disc or the Blu-ray disc. The Blu-ray disc, I understand too, seems to be the Blu-ray disc that we also had from the 2019 earlier release from a few years ago, which means therefore that the supplements that are accompanying this Criterion release of Blue Velvet can only be accessed by putting in the Blu-ray disc, not the 4K UHD disc, but the Blu-ray disc. And so that's the reason why I have the Blu-ray disc in the player right now, to show you the supplements. First, let me just refer to the audio options. As I mentioned before, 5.1 surround or the 2.0 surround, with the information about their reconstruction that is listed in one of the pages of the booklet, the staple booklet, by the way. And then the supplements. So when I press the supplements, and also, yes, you go to the menu and you go to the movie. There are no chapters here. But in any event, we have supplements. And so what do we have in terms of supplements? We have what we had before from 2019, but I'll just say from the bat that some of this stuff is really legendary. And I remember when I first saw I mean, I've seen Blue Velvet so many times prior to the Criterion release from 2019, but then when it was released and I saw these supplements, and especially some of the things involving like uh, lost footage, which is one of the first supplements here, I was just in awe. I mean, some of these scenes that are in the lost footage are so legendary, and I'd heard about them, I'd read about them, I'd never seen them before. Um, and at long last, I'm able to see these that I've only heard about, but now they are come to life. And not only those, but other scenes as well in this lost footage. So this is really legendary stuff. So I'm sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. So again, I'm so excited already talking about the lost footage. But so this is described as 53 minutes of deleted scenes and alternate takes from Blue Velvet assembled by director David Lynch. That's it. So 53 minutes. But this is again the stuff of legend, and I'm not so expert when it comes to the world of Blue Velvet. I know so many people who are in David Lynch films, and I know so many people who are much more expert in the world of David Lynch films than I. But I knew about some of this stuff before I saw this, back in the day. But then when I actually saw some of these scenes, it was like just extraordinary. It was an extraordinary achievement. I'm reminded too of another David Lynch work, which had a similar type of treatment, which is called Twin Peaks Fire Walk With Me. And that's also on a really robust and brilliant Criterion physical media release, by the way. But there's a similar kind of treatment involving deleted and alternate scenes that have been assembled and are standing as their own almost feature-length film, as it were. And I think Blue Velvet's The Lost Footage operates in that way. Really, really exciting. This is its own film, and I can just watch this and enjoy it for what they are, and just imagine and just see this. And there's so many details and musical numbers and character traits that are just emerging, that again, it's the stuff of legend. And I just watched it again a couple days ago, and I was like just a kid again, just watching this, and just be so excited watching this again. I know I've seen it so many times before, but just watching it again, just I feel so thrilled by this. So the lost footage, 53 minutes of deleted scenes and alternate takes from Blue Velvet, assembled by David Lynch. If you haven't seen it, what are you waiting for? All right, so that's the first thing. And then Blue Velvet Revisited. This is described as, in 1985, German filmmaker Peter Bratz was invited by director David Lynch to Wilmington, North Carolina to document the shooting of Blue Velvet on Super 8 in photographs and in audio recordings. The result is this 89-minute unconventional meditation on the film with with music by Cult with No Name, Tuxedo Moon, and John Fox, etc. This is also the stuff of legend. This is 89 minutes. It's described, so yes, an hour and 29 minutes or so, and this is awesome stuff. I mean, this is like in some ways it's like a kind of like fly on the wall, behind the scenes making of feature in a way, but it's more than that, or it's also doing things that is. It's talking with David Lynch or hearing his voiceover discussions, and also other people involved. There's a interesting way. I love the bit where he's standing next to two vending machines. There's like a soda vending machine. There's some a candy vending machine. He's standing in the middle. They're talking, really, and he's shaking hands with someone who comes up to him. It's really so awesome. And then just seeing some of the details of the people at work, and just the mood and atmosphere, and also the photographs that are shown, and it's kind of assembly. It's itself a kind of love letter to Blue Velvet, straight from the heart of Peter Bratz and company. And the assembly and the and just the bits of information, just that feeling and vibe. And there's some rehearsals that are happening of scenes, and you see Isabella Rossellini, Laura Dern, Kyle MacLachlan, Dennis Hopper. Oh, it's really, really wonderful. I absolutely adore this. And this was another great surprise when I saw it for the first time upon the initial Criterion release some time back. And then watching it again recently for purpose of this, again, I got the same, I got chills. This is really great. So Blue Velvet Revisited. So this is about an hour and 30 minutes. So please check it out if you can. It's really, really wonderful. And the thrills and chills don't stop there, because then we have Room to Dream. This is the audio recording well, let me read from the menu here, which is this 18-minute audio recording is of David Lynch reading from Room to Dream, the 2018 book he co-authored with Christine McKenna. So this is really cool. You hear him reading excerpts from the book, which is of course focused in this context on Blue Velvet. There are some really great anecdotes here that are also repeated elsewhere as well in the supplements. So, for instance, I mean, working with Dennis Hopper for one, and the reaction to Dennis Hopper's declaration, I am Frank Booth, or the working with Angela Badalamenti, and that because this is the first time they're working together, and that legendary combination between director and music composer. One of the famous pairings in all of cinema. And here is the start of that in many ways, in terms of his working with Isabella Rossellini on the performance of the song Blue Velvet, and then also working with a kind of theme that will open the film, and then also Mysteries of Love, which is Julie Cruz, and the rest, as they say, is history. It's one of the most legendary songs in the world of David Lynch, and you get to hear a little bit about the genesis here and elsewhere, in fact. So, and then also there's a great story and anecdote, among other things, about the Academy Awards and Best Director Awards for that year, and David Lynch going to the awards and interacting afterwards at one of the awards after parties, I think, with Elizabeth Taylor. So you got to check that out if you can. This is really great. Again, chills. I love this stuff. So Room to Dream, approximately 18 minutes. So please check that out if you can. Then we have interviews. So the first one is Angela Badalamenti, and this interview is approximately 16 minutes. This is so beautiful and wonderful. I mean, Angela Badalamenti, an artist, and oh my goodness, his legacy just will be forever, absolutely forever. And to hear, in this instance here, some of the words from his perspective as to why he started in music. There was a moment early in his life where he almost gave up music, but he decided to continue on after a certain anecdotes that he describes, and also working his early career prior to working on Blue Velvet, and working with David Lynch on Blue Velvet, their initial meeting and reaction, and his reaction, because as I mentioned, the genesis of the song, the very famous song, Mysteries of Love, it's spoken about here from Angelo Badalamenti's point of view, and he talks about getting these words from David Lynch. It's like, what is this? There is no structure, and that's how can I make a song of this? That kind of thing. But he did, and not only did he make a song, I mean, it's the stuff of legend. So that's a really great and very amusing anecdote, and it's an asking David Lynch and working with Isabella Rossellini and just trying to get that right. Because again, the performance of Blue Velvet by Dorothy Valens, Isabella Rossellini, is one of the make or break moments of this. I mean, it had to succeed, otherwise the film could have just fallen, and it succeeds so brilliantly. And again, it just captures the haunting, delicate sensitivity of Dorothy Valens, and also the seductive qualities. Well, it's pitch perfect. And then the rest, as they say, is history. So this is, and now watching this interview of Angela Badalamenti now in 2024, it's very bittersweet. Being a fan, a great admirer of the work of Angela Badalamenti, it's very, very bittersweet, quite emotional indeed. So this is really wonderful to watch again, the interview with Angela Badalamenti. So that's the first one. Then It's a Strange World. This is also approximately 16 minutes, and we have many people speaking here. in terms of the props, Bernie, and then Jeff Goodwin in terms of makeup, Ian Wolfe in terms of second unit directing, Peter Bratz in terms of his documenting the making of with his supplement that we discussed earlier, Mark Fincannon and Fred Pickler in terms of casting, and also Fred Pickler in his role. Gordon, because Gordon's the man, right? And Dan Knies in terms of Steadicam, and David Hartley as well in terms of discussion of casting. There's really some interesting anecdotes that emerge here. For instance, the creation, use of silicone to make the ear and the size of the ear and the hair that's on the ear. So who does the hair belong to? You're going to have to watch this supplement to find out. Also, the genesis of the use of the lamp in the now famous Dean Stockwell, Ben, Roy Orbison in Dream sequence. And to get it, how this came about, this is just a revelation and the like. And so again, these and other reasons to watch this. It's a Strange World. Again, watching it again, I'm just giddy. It makes me so happy to revisit this stuff again. So anyway, to get the size of the, oh my goodness. Anyway, it's a Strange World. Please check it out if you can. Then Mysteries of Love, which is, I think, a now famous documentary from an earlier, it was the MGM DVD release, I think. I have that, and I've watched it many times on that DVD. It's prior to the Criterion release, and now Criterion took it and put it as part of their 2019 Blu-ray release, and now also for the 2024 re-release. It's a legendary documentary. It's about 70 minutes, right? This 70-minute 2002 documentary features interviews with Blue Velvet's cast and crew, including, among others, David Lynch. And so we get to hear from David Lynch directly. I guess you could say we heard from him directly when we hear his audio reading of the chapter on Room to Dream, but we actually see him. And also as these types of documentaries go, this is, I think, it's very structured and very it has a good flow to it. And there's some wonderful anecdotes, such as working with Dennis Hopper on set and how that was, and because there are some scenes that are very uncomfortable, say between Isabella Rossellini and Dennis Hopper, but there was a good working method that was had there, and also the application of the music and what this meant in terms of David Lynch's career and working with. In the 80s and prior to this, he had made a film which is called Dune, etc. So, and the importance of David Lynch having creative control over this film, Blue Velvet, in terms of editing and final cut, etc. So, and then working with the producers. So it's all here in this legendary documentary. So I've seen this so many times, I've lost count, but I saw it again. And I loved every minute of it, so it's great to have it here for purposes of this re-release. So this is Mysteries of Love. And then Test Chart, which is another cool little thing. Well, it is what it is. It is what it says it is. It's Test Chart. So it's very charming. It's very sweet. And the way it ends too, it's really quite lovely indeed. So watch to the very end. I think you'll love it just as much as I. So Test Chart. This is approximately 1 minute. So yeah. So there you go. So yeah, these are the supplements that were included before and that are still now included for purposes of this re-release. So nothing new in terms of supplements, at least as far as I understand it. That's okay from my vantage point. Maybe it might be disappointing to some. Criterion sometimes does this, or I think oftentimes does this with their re-releases of titles that already exist in the physical media catalog, but are given the 4K UHD treatment. Nothing new is added on that occasion. I would always like to see something new. It's very exciting to see and hear something new if that's possible. I understand maybe it's not always possible. But I'm always welcome to that chance of hearing something new, were it possible. Here in the case of the Blue Velvet re-release, however, what I can say is my feelings are I'm still working my way through all of these supplements. I've seen them many times, but there's some details that I still haven't caught. And so, but I'm working my way through as much as I can. And so it's something that's makes me very excited on the one hand, but also reminds me just how little I know about this film Blue Velvet, and I've gotta learn more, and so I'm still making my way through the supplements in a manner of speaking. So um, this is making me 100% content indeed. It might not be the same way for everyone because there's nothing newly added for the purpose of the 2024 re-release. And if you feel that way, I completely understand. But for me, this is more than enough for many lifetimes over in further exploration of this work, which is Blue Velvet. So now let us continue on with other discussion points with respect to the Criterion release of Blue Velvet. And I should just point out that this cover design and the packaging, which is the Digipack packaging, with the front end, with the outer compartment and the inner compartment, which also houses the discs as well. This is very much similar to the earlier Blu-ray release from some years back. The outer packaging and the inner packaging as well, so which is really quite lovely. And the cover art, it's the same as before, and the packaging is the same as before. And I know some people might feel like, again, if they're going to re-release, if Criterion's going to re-release a title that already exists in the collection, then maybe they should try to dress it up differently, or maybe add different artistic touches to it, or different cover art design, or something. And if you feel that way, that's, again, I respect that viewpoint, and I can understand. I think there's something just about Blue Velvet that this is, I don't know, to my mind, there couldn't have been any other choice for the cover art design than this, which is what they had from the earlier release. You know what I mean? It's Blue Velvet, so I'm okay with it looking the same as before, and it looked great before, and it still looks great now. Just in terms of the art, let me say that the art is credited to art director Sarah Habibi, designer Fred Davis, art production coordinator William Breeze, print production artist Craig Phillips, art assistant Julie Sussman. And then speaking of the booklet, and we have another robust booklet, which is lovely. This is the 2024 booklet. And this is mirroring the earlier 2019 booklet as well. I would say that the dimensions are slightly smaller. I'm just trying to hold it. If you can see, the back one is the 2019 release, and the front one is the current 2024 release. And you can see the 2024 release has slightly smaller dimensions than the larger one, but that's okay. That's perfectly fine. And so we have, like before, we have the casting credits, and then Christine McKenna's A Suburban Romance, Only Different, which is really great. It's long, it's detailed, it's so well written, as well as accompanied in terms of the page layout by a number of the photographs that are very much associated very famously with the film Blue Velvet. So we got that before, and we're getting it again now. So this is top-notch stuff. We're not getting anything new in terms of writings, my understanding goes, but that is no problem indeed. This essay, you can read it once, twice, 10 times, 100 times, and still find something new every time. So it's great to have it there. So please check it out if you can. And this is the booklet that accompanies the 2024 release of Blue Velvet. So thank you very much for putting up with me in my giddy and unorganized way, in a manner that I'm always doing when I'm talking about these films. And this discussion on Blue Velvet is no exception to that, so I apologize. But I hope you can understand. This film is one that I think it's very important for me and for a lot of people. And I know people who know this film in such a detailed and very specific way, and understand this film much more than I could ever hope to try to possibly achieve. But it's releases like this, which is mirroring the great release from Criterion from some years back. It's releases like this that really helped me to further my own cinema journey into works like David Lynch's Blue Velvet. Really. And just the excitement that I feel again after. I mean, I've seen this film so many times, and I feel like, I mean, every time I learn something new. Every single time I learn something new, and that's thanks to the Criterion release, which is now something that I was enjoying, courtesy of this re-release from Criterion in this year 2024. So wonderful stuff indeed. Blue Velvet. Please forgive me for one last indulgence. Please let me do one more very poor David Lynch impression to end the discussion. So,
Final cut was very important for me, so I asked Dino, and he shook my hand.
All right. So there you have it. That's Blue Velvet. How do you feel about the film? Please let me know in the comment section below. As always, I would very much love to hear what it is you have to say. But thank you very much for your time, my dear friends. It's always nice to see you and to hear from you. And I hope this video finds you well, and that you continue to watch a lot of great movies, including Blue Velvet, including other films by David Lynch, other works by David Lynch, including other works in the Criterion Collection and beyond. So until the next video, my dear friends, stay strong, stay safe, and cheers.
Dino, thank you very much. Thank you. Mysteries of Love. That's what I think the song should be called, Angelo. Can you do something with that? Can you do something with Mysteries of Love? You and I, Angelo. You and I. Love you forever, Angelo.